children, I'll tell you the news. Don't worry about the names or dates, you already know it's true. Your doctor hates your baby, the prime minister's a ghost, and all them folks are sailing here 'cause they're in love with boats. Superfoods can save us from all our evil sin. JFK and Elvis own a bar in Wisconsin. And vaccinations were created by the CIA to steal votes from Bernie Sanders and turn your babies gay. So click the link you think you'd like and get tooled for a fight against those lefty fascist communists who are leaning too far right.
Hi and welcome to Not Another Fake Newscast. I'm Paul.
And I'm Jerry, and we are joined here today by SNP councillor for the Murdiston ward, Cameron McManus. Cameron is kind of from our local area, or lives in our local area, from Saltcoats originally. And, you know, but I mean, we kind of know him from local politics and stuff like that. You're also the representative for Central Scotland for the National Executive Committee, the SNP, right?
Yeah, that's true.
And am I right in saying the youngest councillor in Scotland?
No, it's a screw up with the LGIU. I'm like the third or fourth youngest in all of Scotland.
That's shite. We only got you on here because we heard you were the youngest. No, so I mean, I suppose the first question, one that we tend to ask the politicians that we get on here is, you know, why politics? What drew you towards it?
I mean, it was sort of the independence referendum beforehand. It was the usual, oh, I'm not into politics. It's all for your folk are chasing the money and the big wages and everything else. But I get caught up through that. I went to one of Tommy Sheridan's rallies down at Paver Community Hall during the referendum. That's where I sort of got engaged and then get active through the local Yes group.
Right.
And then you realised after you get active that it's absolutely not for people chasing the money or the big bucks.
And it was the SNP because you were basically affiliated with the idea of independence, and that's what you think is the best future for Scotland.
Yeah, I mean, my mum's been a member of the SNP since she was 16, so she's been active for everything else on her side. So mum's made friends and everything else, and I've made friends through it beforehand. But apart from that, it was more or less the party I saw fit and where I fit into Liam.
So, how long have you been a councillor for then?
2017, just over 3 years.
And you know, are you enjoying it? Is it hard? You know, what's your day to day like?
It's stressful. It's and there's different sort of parts to do with it. I mean, some of the jobs you're dealing with people that are living in point blank poverty and needing help to the full extent, and other times you're helping somebody that stays in a affluent area help change their door number so that their house has got more value. And I genuinely wish I was joking about that last one.
Sounds like classic DL Park to me.
Brutal, man. So, I mean, do you feel like you get a lot out of it when you're you know? Has there been any situations where you felt like you've really helped somebody and it's, you know, you've walked away from it thinking, well, this is why I do this. I've made a difference there.
Yeah, there's different sort of roaches, but obviously there's ones that you get attached with, and there's individuals that you get attached with and make sure they always try and get their best for both Liam and their children or their families and everything else, and help them get out of bad situations. But it's hard to, obviously, if it's gone GDPR and everything else.
Yeah.
But it's fulfilling. Fulfilling.
Yeah, you definitely feel the rewards from helping them through yourself.
What's the more frustrating parts of the job then?
It's normally the council just constantly hitting back with no, constantly. It's like, well, you can do it. You've done it numerous times before. You can turn a blind eye or change decisions, but you're still just adamant on this case. And
so it's North Lanarkshire Council for the listeners that you're involved with. And it's been Labour controlled for, you know, as long as I can remember.
Forever. Right.
Bit of background, there was it's a Labour minority ran council at the moment. The SNP in the last council elections actually got the most councillors from any individual party, and I believe offered to work with Labour on the council.
Yeah, we were pretty constructive, and it was more or less we all got elected on the Friday, and by the Monday we had a letter written up asking for a coalition of some sorts. But Labour were playing the hard ball and wanted leader, deputy leader, provost, and lead for education. So it was the 5 big jobs within the council, if you include the deputy provost as well, and then they were willing to work with us after they gave us that. So they weren't willing to negotiate or anything like that, and just more or less turned to the Tories straight after.
And so for the 3 years that you've been there, they've been in a coalition of sorts with the. I mean, they claim that it's not officially a coalition, right? But
Yeah.
To all intents and purposes, that's the situation.
Yeah, the Tories haven't got any convenerships except audit and scrutiny panel, which they have to have through legal reasons because of North Lanarkshire Council in the past. But,
there's lots and lots of things that because you're a North Lanarkshire Council, I am absolutely biting my tongue on at the present second. But yeah.
And
there's still sort of close affiliations. I mean, some of their friends groups do overlap, and some of them have been friends from primary school and high school and still sort of close friends now. So I think like there's that sort of string pulling as well.
Old Boys Club, it is very
Yeah.
much so, and it's always been kind of known of that in the area. And I think it's something important for our English listeners and that to understand that when we talk about, when they're talking about Labour and the Conservatives in England with regards to how they control councils and stuff like that, the lots of the policies that get passed in Scotland at the present moment by Labour majority councils would happily sit on scenarios that were Tory councils in England. Do you know what I mean? Like, essentially, Scottish Labour is definitely more conservative, than English Labour.
so I mean, definitely at the council level and stuff at times, I would say, yeah. One thing that I'm curious about, is there any kind of constructive sort of ways of working with the council as an SNP member who's kind of been frozen out of the decision making process? Are there certain committees and stuff where you are involved and you are able to make decisions? Do they choose to work with you at certain points, or is it very much down party lines, just frozen out all the time?
There's a few times where Labour and the SNP policy sort of cross over, so we'll always back each other on these sort of issues, like the Food 365, Club 365 issue that feeds children from deprived areas during the school holidays. That was sort of one that we all agreed on, and the Tories were point blank against, which is one of the...
The Tories voted against feeding impoverished kids. You're like baddies.
Such a Tory move, isn't it?
Like that Mitchell and Webb. Like, do you think we're the baddies? There's a skull on our logos.
I mean, what was their reasoning for being against that exactly?
It was costing roughly about, I think it was like £1 million a year for the full of North Lanarkshire. But the full of North Lanarkshire's population is about 330,000 people. So once you figure out the kids and cost of meals and activities and hiring the halls and paying the staff, it was obviously worthwhile feeding children.
Yeah.
But it's more the price side of it, because the council are taking cuts here and there. That's their approach, that we can't afford to feed these children.
The Tories probably thought that if you start feeding them now, they'll just fucking expect to get fed forever, because that sounds like a standard Tory policy.
So, and are there any committees as part of the council that you're involved in?
I'm on the education committee. There's the environmental and transport committee, and there's one that continues to change the name. I can remember the old name for it, which was the communities and equalities committee. That it's been treated as a subcommittee from the council. It's not treated as a full-on committee, but it's still got as much power as the rest of them. It does take more of the approach as to how to make it a better and fairer place, the whole of North Lanarkshire.
Right, okay. So that in terms of diversity, like gender and race and stuff like that.
Ironically, but yet the council's more like a retirement home for old white men.
Well, I mean, there's that, and I think, again, for listeners, it's important to note that Wisha probably, or the North Lanarkshire area in the grand scheme of things, probably is not as diverse as many councils, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, as in, there's not as many black people or Asian people in the North Lanarkshire area as there is in pretty much any other region of the whole of the UK, give or take. Do you know what I mean? Maybe Orkney. Like,
there's plenty of places up in the northeast and stuff like that, but yeah, like we're not the most ethnically diverse. Although, like, it's certainly, I would say it's more ethnically diverse now than it was when I was at primary school.
oh god, yeah, absolutely, 100%.
I mean, 3 of the councillors within North Lanarkshire are from BAME backgrounds as well, and that's, I think there's only 6 or 7 in the full of Scotland. They think that North Lanarkshire's got 3 of them is huge.
That's pretty impressive, actually.
They must.
The 3 of them are SNP as well, but
Yeah.
I mean, your Labour's your usual white men, and same with the Tories.
Is it a lot of guys then that have been there for a very long time that are the Labour representatives on the council?
Well, I need to be fair, it's not just Labour, there's SNP ones in there that have been there for nearly 20, 25, 30 years that are obviously pushing it out the edge of the door, but we need to make room for the younger ones to come through. Because I mean, North Lanarkshire always plans for the next year, the next 2 years, but I think that's because of the age demographic within the council.
Yeah.
So if we get more young people in it, it will be more long-term planning rather than the short-term.
You can't plan for 10 years if you're not sure that 50% of the people are going to be there in 10 years.
And for the SNP locally, then are there some young? Is there some young blood lined up to take a run at getting elected for the council?
There's always, I mean, if you look at Marlow and Wishaw, there's a strong young group that are active, but whether obviously the majority of them are still either in university or other jobs, so obviously the council isn't the best paid job in the world, so it's a lot of financial choices to make through whether they want to go for it or not.
Yeah,
it's certainly one of the things that we've discussed before, which is it's a big
commitment
and a big barrier for you to cross, that you have to make the decision that, say you've come out of university and you've got like a law degree, you are definitely going to be making more money as a lawyer than you are as a councillor, or you're going to be making more money as a lawyer than you are an MP, you know what I mean, in most cases. So it becomes a very difficult decision, which then takes away lots of the high quality that you could be getting. I want to be involved in it, but just see that financial barrier as something that's totally impossible.
Yeah, I mean, Paul and I have spoken before that perhaps increasing the wages of MPs might be a way to break down barriers for working class people to enter into it as a profession, because I think a lot of people will see it as, well, you know, I could get paid better and have, you know, with less scrutiny and less media scrutiny and stuff like that elsewhere. What do you think about that? Do you think it's a...
I mean, the MPs obviously get about 70 grand a year, same with the MSPs, but the councillors are only getting 17. I say only 17. 17's a good wage, but at the end of the day, it's hard enough to try and make that stretch at the best of times.
Yeah, definitely.
It becomes more upsetting when you see some of the numbers of certain council members in North Lanarkshire, or certain civil servants in North Lanarkshire that get paid a disgusting amount of money. Like,
huge payoff packages that magically appear.
I think we have the highest
paid,
remunerated
highest
civil
paid
servant in the UK at the moment in North Lanarkshire, do we not?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm surely chief exec, so I think it's 110 grand a year, and that's before pension.
Yeah. So you are also a member of the NEC, the National Executive Council for the SNP, which has been you know, sort of in the news and talked about a lot on Twitter and Facebook and the like of late, due to the decision which was passed that essentially if you are an SNP MP and you wish to run for Holyrood, it's been written into the kind of code of conduct or the rules now that you have to resign as an MP and put up £10,000, was it?
Yeah, that's the average fee for a by-election.
Yeah,
across.
you have to fund that yourself.
So was it resign? And so I totally misunderstood. I thought it was resign or fund it yourself, but it's both.
It's both.
Yeah.
All right, cool. Yeah.
So obviously, you know, there was a lot of chat that this was something which was done kind of deliberately to block Joanna Cherry's bid for the Edinburgh Central seat. And there was all kinds of crazy conspiracy theories kicking around on Twitter and the like at the time. as somebody who obviously has that insight, first of all, can you tell us a wee bit about the structure of the NEC and how it works?
Yeah, every region in the whole of Scotland has 2 representatives. It's normally male and female, but there's a female only shortlist to elect one of them, so it is sort of gender balanced. But then you've got all your affiliate groups, the YSI, the Young Scots for Independence, have got a delegate who's allowed to vote, and so is the SNP students, the BAME affiliate, so is the Out for Independence. So there's quite a lot of votes. I think there's like 45 people roughly.
And those people are kind of elected at conference or?
Yeah, if you go to conference, then you're allowed a vote to make the decisions as to who represents you and who represents your area.
So you were nominated at conference and you were put forward for that?
Aberdeen last year, I think it was 36 votes out of, I think it was 80. So get a majority, but just.
So when it comes to sort of decision making and stuff, then does everybody get an equal vote? Is it weighted? How does it come about?
Everybody's votes 1 for 1. So
Yeah.
it's the votes. Nobody's got any superior power over any decisions made.
So for something like the decision that was made, with regards to MPs standing for Holyrood, where did that decision come from? What was the reason for it? Is it something you personally agree with?
We were given, I'm sure it was, I can't remember if it was 3 or 4 options, but one of them was a dual mandate, resign before the election and fund the by-election that will happen at the same time.
Yeah.
Or you have a timescale of 6 months to sort of resign and step down from Westminster. So I couldn't make that meeting, but I agreed with the decision that was made that they have to fund it themselves. I mean, these MPs knew that the Holyrood elections was less than a year and a half away.
Yeah.
But yet still stood.
They still chose
in
to run
December.
at Westminster.
But if you look at Airdrie and Shorts, you can see that Neil Gray, the MP, standing. So it's not a barrier stopping them from going. They can still go for it and fund it themselves.
Yeah, and I guess it needs to be considered the funding that's required to campaign for a by-election at a time where we've kind of had election after election after people are seriously numbed to politics at the moment. So it's not an easy campaign to run to drum up interest for a by-election. It's potentially a risky one that the SNP could stand to lose.
Yeah, I mean, if you look since 2014, we've had an election every year in Scotland, as well as the snap general election 2017 that happened. I think it was 4 weeks after our council election, so they were all within a short time period. And the Holyrood elections and Westminster elections normally do cost around about £8,000 or £10,000, depending constituency, the size, and everything else. So it's, if you look at the SNP, unlike the Lib Dems and Labour and the Tories, we've not got big party donors flinging money into our bank every couple of months. It's mostly all grassroots members, and as the party membership that is paying the levies to the party to help fund these elections.
The other thing is traditional campaigning is going to realistically have to dramatically change. A lot of the traditional campaign methods that were used in a post-COVID world don't really like, I mean, I can't imagine it's as easy to have people even just doorstepping people, because you can't just have people just showing up at folks' doors and chatting now, let alone all the other parts that work in person or that work in groups, and there's a whole load of things that realistically don't exist anymore. So even the 10 grand is probably being incredibly nice for you to get the same type of coverage but without the same type of resources anymore.
Sort of try a plan as to how you do that, because obviously from my point of view, one of the best bits about an election is being able to go on the doorsteps and talk to people. That's what I like doing as a councillor before all this, was just showing up the street and knocking a few doors and talking to people and seeing what they felt the problems were in the area and helping them to solve them. But obviously you can't really do that now. Somebody shows up in your door, you're both standing 2 meters apart, shouting at each other, and you're hoping the other person's wearing either a mask or some sort of equipment to stop breathing at you.
I mean, you're very real dangers. I mean, without getting bleak and without focusing on COVID, but if you go to the door and you shake someone's hand and then suddenly you've shook another 30 people's hand that day and you've picked up coronavirus, you're a super
it's
spreader.
all right. Boris said it was okay to shake folks' hands and he didn't get coronavirus, so that's fine.
I think he pretended to.
That's an conspiracy theory.
Oh, man. Right. So I mean,
I heard it was Bill Gates.
he wants to microchip everybody. Paul, get it right. So I mean, are you missing then that's that personal interaction with your constituents and what have you?
Yeah, it feels like sort of a distanced job right now, but yeah, before COVID, it was sort of hands on the ground, going round speaking to people, like either in half decent positions like your community councils and actually know what general idea what's going on, or even just showing up to somebody's doorstep and going, "Hi, I'm your councillor, and what's your issues?" and helping them that way. Obviously, now it's just more of having to phone round to people you already have a connection with, making sure if there's any issues or anything else, or relying on people phoning you
Coming to
and
you.
through social media. So it's sort of
Have you had a lot of contact from the public during COVID then in that way?
it's been sort of a different approach. I mean, it's one of the major issues was when the council closed the tips and everything else because it was obviously a busy place at the best of times, never mind try to control people during COVID and keep people away from
It's
people.
because you keep changing the bins, man.
That was one of our election promises that Labour made in 2017, that if they went to power in the council, that they wouldn't change the bin schedule or anything at all. And it was literally within not even a month of them being in control, they changed the bin schedule. And it's if it's big bad Scottish Government's fault, they had to change it, but not telling us why.
Yeah. So are you having people reach out to you on social media and stuff like that then?
Comparing to other councils, my social media approach has normally been higher, but I think that's just because of I'm obviously younger and more active on.
Yeah.
It's definitely an age thing.
Yeah.
Like, you've got less of a barrier to come up against.
Yeah,
Like,
you can feel it. I mean, one of the councillors for us in the SNP is in the 70s, and Tom, who's the leader now, used to do the press.
Mhm.
But when we took over in 2017, we had to set up a Facebook page, we had to set up a Twitter page, and he's like, "Oh, why do we need all of these?" To his, obviously, he's not.
Can we just send out flyers?
He's not used to. He's used to just being able to write out to the editor of the paper and everything else, and get a couple of lines in the newspapers rather than going for the whole social media approach and getting it over right there and now, rather than having, "Oh no, we've got a deadline at 12:30 on Monday to try and make sure we're in Monday's papers."
The thing is, I'll not, like, no mentioning names or something, but in our political group chats and that we've got, it does come up sometimes that some of the older MPs, SNPs, MSPs across parties, not one specific party, sometimes you see them post things on Twitter and it's like, somebody did, like, delete their Twitter account. Like, why have you said that? Like, the inability to process how social media will take that thing you have said out of context, or will jump on that last line that you put in, something that was very concise, but you put something at the bottom that's just nuts. Like, and these things come up, and it's definitely, I mean, without no being ageist to that, but it's definitely an age thing. It's definitely an understanding the way that people operate on social media.
Have you found some of the older councillors that you're working with have kind of adapted to it and have got into it a bit more? Or?
Yeah, I've been working with quite a few of the councils, helping them set up a Facebook page, and some of them won't touch Twitter at all because it is normally just
abuse.
Abuse.
It's a pretty toxic environment.
You can normally tell, especially with the older councillors, MPs and MSPs, that somebody else is running their Twitter account or their Facebook account and they've not got any use. But I think that if half the MPs and MSPs had access to their own Twitter, you'd get a better picture as to who's representing you.
Yeah.
Well, very much so. And I imagine, so moving forward, coming towards Holyrood and stuff, I imagine a big part of, obviously, not to give away any secrets or anything, but I imagine that the SNP are probably looking at their footprint on social media and how that's going to be, the next 6 months is going to be a big chunk of that budget is going to be towards social media to try and get, because I mean, realistically, as we spoke about numerous occasions, most people aren't buying a newspaper anymore. Do you know what I mean? They're not seeing and if they are getting a newspaper, they're seeing an online version of the newspaper anyway. So you can target that anyway. So even more so, there's more budget towards once it's in the newspaper, you can push that out as an advert. So I'm guessing that's a big part of what the SNP are looking at moving into the Holyrood elections. Realise nobody can see my hand there.
But the SNP's also had a huge presence on social media. And I think there was, I can't remember if it was the 2019 general election or if it was the election before that, we had one of the biggest communications with people on Facebook. I think it was over, I think it was a million, 1.2, 1.5 million or something like that, with communications from people either seeing the post, liking it, sharing it, and commenting and everything else. So they have got a better reach than other political parties, and I think that was based on the UK party. So it's not as if it's your Labour, your Tory, your local SNP.
It's not the 5 million people base. It's the whole 65 or whatever it is million people in the UK.
So is it something that you have spoke about and strategized for?
Well, that's obviously
the campaigning in a COVID world.
That's not more like a local approach, but I know the HQ always do all the posts and they're always active in social media, and there's always something, at least 2 or 3 things in the Twitter and the Facebook every day. But I know locally that we are looking into obviously being more active on their Facebook page. We have a Twitter page, but we need to remember the password for it because.
But I suppose it's not just Twitter either.
SNP.1. I take a stab into that and say
if you're campaigning, your traditional campaigning's kind of been taken away from you to a certain extent with the doorstep and with the flyering and stuff like that. It's stuff that you're not going to be able to do in a COVID world. So you obviously need to think about alternatives, which, there's a podcast right here if any of your representatives want to come on and get their message across to the local people.
At the current rate that we're running through SNP members, we're going to be few of them left by the time we get into next year.
Nobody for Labour will reply to us.
Won't reply to us. No. I mean, and as in, we have sent emails to a person who we were informed was the head of the media for Labour, certainly up here, and they told us to contact someone else who never got back to us. I then contacted him again, explained what we do and where we come from and how it would be very worthwhile because
we've had
Greens, we've had SNP, you know what I mean? Like, it's not like we're just trying to and in the so you're aware, I was a paid Labour member up until the end of the 2019 general election there. Like, I would have no problem having a Labour member on to discuss. It's not like, I'm not going to lie. It would be a tough sell if we had like Ruth Davidson on to be as pleasant possibly about certain policies that have came from her party than it would be. But in the grand scheme of things, all of them are allowed. All of them were more than happy to have on to let them say their piece because for the most part, politics.
We're all about democracy.
Yeah, politics are politics, you know what I mean? And whether I like it or not doesn't really matter in the grand scheme of things. But it only seems to be SNP and Green that are willing to come on and talk to us.
They must be scared they'll get too hard a time, the rest of them. So I guess obviously the news that we've had today is that the SNP are going to draft a bill to set out the terms of a new referendum. That's going to happen before they break for the Holyrood election next year. So, I mean, obviously we don't know the details of that yet. I doubt you've got too much insider knowledge of it, but
even if you did, I can't imagine you're going to tell us.
But what's your feeling about what you would expect to see in that?
Well, so it's part of the 2016 manifesto. If there was any huge changes to that, and obviously we're taking the EU referendum in 2016 and even the recent pollings have been pretty good. That
a material change.
That we had to sort of stick to that and bring it through the legislations to put it in place. But like we said before, it's Westminster that are holding it up. So if we get the back end of the deal done first before approaching and unfortunately getting permission that we shouldn't really need to ask for, but hopefully if everything goes into place and we get a good result next year in the Holyrood elections, then hopefully it should be, I'd say, we're all about a year and a half after the Holyrood elections.
So that's it. In your opinion, does it does it balance on the idea of SNP getting a majority essentially? Yeah. So I mean, I take it that'll be the deciding / push that is needed to be able to approach Westminster.
I'd include the Greens as well, because obviously the Greens are a pro-independence party, and there's a few other like the fringe pro-independence parties out there as well, that if they get a few seats, we can always say that these are pro-independence parties people are voting for. It's not always just about the SNPs, but especially Sky and the BBC always sort of push over. It's always the SNP rather than the independence movement as a whole, because it is more than one political party. I even know a few Tories that still vote Tory to the day that are backing independence and vote yes and have before and will again. So it's not just the left or the centre left, it's more of a broad church.
Well, it is, and I think that's probably something that's the optics that have to be dealt with by the entire independence movement, because it is perceived as SNP and independence are the most intertwined thing in the entire world, and that's not just in UK media. That is in people that you could go and talk to now in the pub in Wishaw will tell you the fact that they're not going to vote for independence because they hate Nicola Sturgeon, for example.
I've had a few on the doorstep. So I was in Craigneuk during the independence referendum in 2014.
Yeah.
And this
That was a fun experience. Holy shit.
It was, and I was up at the door, and the guy came out, and he had orange hall top on, so he did one of the polo shirts, and all going through my head. I'm like, I know where this is going. I know where this is going. So you're obviously
probably not going to get a hug here.
You're staying nice, and you're asking the 4 questions. What political party do you close identify yourself with? Oh, none of them. You're all arseholes. And I'm like, all right, okay. And how do you feel about independence? Oh, no chance, rule Britannia. And I'm like, all right, okay. Left it there, didn't bother the rest of the questions.
Question 3.
Left it there, didn't bother the rest of the questions.
Rule Britannia.
And then in 2015, we were in the same area, and me not noticing, went up to the door, knocked it, and as soon as I knocked the door, it was the exact same door I was at. But then
wearing the same polo shirt, probably.
the same guy came out, and he was like, what do you want? Dead aggressive. And I'm like, sorry if I ask you a few quick questions. And he's like, all right, okay. And I was like, what political party do you close identify yourself with? And he's like, none of them. And I'm like, I was expecting that one. And I said, who are you voting for at the Westminster elections? And he says SNP. And I'm like, can I ask you why? And without batting an eyelid, the guy says, for as long as that dirty orange bastard, dirty Fenian bastard, Jim Murphy is in charge of the Labour Party, I will never be voting for Labour again in my life. And I'm like, could you not be voting Tory? And he's like, no, I can't stick Tory. I stay in Favour. I stay in just down the borders of Ravenscraig.
like, can he vote for Tories because I grew up next to the Ravenscraig? Can he vote for Labour because they're ruled by a Fenian? Going to have to vote for SNP even though I'm against independence.
That's bad.
Lads, yous are broken. Yeah, just as I thought, see for when you're doing the next load of campaigning, see if you chat the guy's door again. Start with, finish your sentence, pal. Rule Britannia quality. That's what I was looking for. Now, what party are you going to vote? Like, get him on your side. Get him on your side.
But it's still strange that there's still people in the whole of Scotland and even the whole of UK and Ireland that still sort of think with that sort of approach that you can't vote with somebody because of the colour of their skin or their religion or some other sort of ideology.
And I mean, I think again for our listeners,
maybe because you don't like trans people or something like that.
I mean, that's only a small percentage of Scotland as it fucking turns out at the present moment, judging by Twitter. But yeah, I mean, it is a thing for our listeners to, I mean, I know most of them are aware anyway because we bring it up all the time. Very much colour of the skin round about here matters a lot less than colour of your football top. Like, I mean, that is a defining characteristic of what makes these decisions though, isn't it? It's like, we've always made the joke before, it's like, are you a Muslim? But it's you're a Catholic Muslim or a Protestant Muslim. Like, it doesn't really... It doesn't really matter if you're Muslim, providing you support the right football team.
Yeah, it's I know. I do I do feel like it's not as bad as it was when I was a kid.
Oh, not at all. I mean, when I was growing up in the west of Scotland, it was rife through there. I mean, I went to a non-denominational primary school, but then a Catholic secondary school. But as soon as I started going to that Catholic secondary school, half my family stopped talking to me and my family because of the high school that I chose. And I chose that high school because it was a brand new state-of-the-art high school.
Yeah.
Plus, it was literally the bottom of my street, so I could get out of my bed at 5 to 9 and still make it to school on time, which is my ideology. I could get an extra 20 minutes in bed for
Yeah,
the
man,
next
too right.
4 or 5 years. It's one of those.
That's a 5-year commitment right there. Do you know what I mean?
But even at the same time, I mean, when I was writing my CV at high school, I didn't put what high school I went to. But yet, the last couple of years, I have been applying for jobs outside the council. So what school did you go to? And it's like, well, it's got nothing to do with the job at all. I mean, I don't know what the point of the question is. And normally they get a bit of a red face when you're hitting back with a response like, why do you want to know what school I went to?
Well, I mean, it is something that I'm very aware of even now when I fill in a job application, for example, or something. When it asks you your nationality, when it asks you your religion, depending on where the company is based, or, you know what I mean? Like, there is definitely companies that employ the now in Scotland who, if I put down Scottish, it makes me less appealing than if I had put down British, because they're both there in the drop-down menu. And by the same basic principle, I have definitely not got given a job before because I didn't know the Masonic handshake. I know that for a fact. Like, he tried and I said, it's not me. I mean, my surname's McCann. I'm
You
from
should
West
just go,
Yorkshire.
oh, what you did?
Lads are nonce, by the way. This
Make a big deal out of it, freak them out. No, but I hope that it's getting better. I hope that it's getting better. I wouldn't want my kids to grow up in the same way that I did. Like, so in this town, you know, there were times where I was spat on and, you know, called a Fenian bastard on my way to school. I know similarly friends of mine got the opposite treatment.
Yeah.
And yeah, we should be better than that. You know, in an independent Scotland, we'll need to be working together with each other to move the country forward. Hopefully we can get past all of that.
Yeah, I know we are sort of getting better. I mean, my girlfriend's dad is in the Orange Order and everything else. It's a little bit more awkward when you're sitting down his house and you're sitting there as a SNP anti-monarchy councillor who wants to break up everything that he more or less stands for, as well as going out with his daughter.
I must make for like interesting nights at, you know,
Interesting
it's a dinner conversation.
birthday parties down the hall must be an absolute nightmare.
My wife's from North Lanarkshire. Like, her family would be very much of the loyalist persuasion. So yeah, I feel you, man. I've been there. But again, they've always been sound with me. Always been very welcoming and stuff like that.
Yeah,
as well.
definitely.
So
Means because they've got a man on the inside now.
So did you watch the documentary, the Kirsty Walk thing that was on last week?
I completely forgot it was on, and obviously when I went on the BBC to go and watch it, that's when 38 time period they took it off the BBC iPlayer for a day or 2 days. So I've not actually got around to watching it. I know it's back up now, but I know it's been not doctored. In the use of a better word, of edited it.
It's been
after
edited.
post.
It's been edited after post.
They edited after the point, aye.
Yeah, it's been re-edited since. So it was obviously edited. Then it was deemed after it was shown that it contained information that was non-suitable or didn't meet criteria of the legal requirements. I actually don't know. I never made any effort to check what the specific issue was that they pulled it, but they pulled it and re-edited it.
Like, if it had been made in-house by the BBC, it would never have passed the checks and balances. Like, so Caitlin Smith, there was the day after the Kirsty Walk documentary aired, there was a Radio 4 documentary done by had Danny Garavelli presenting it. It was Caitlin who produced it.
I did see them talking about it.
And, you know, she was basically saying that they had talked about doing a kind of similar type of show to what Kirsty Walk eventually done, which was essentially around the Me Too movement and the sort of...
I would happily watch Danny Garavelli doing that. Well done by Caitlin, though. You know what I mean?
But
a better piece.
But they were basically told by their commissioning editor that they couldn't, because it wouldn't meet the criteria for impartiality. Like, how can you can't basically make that show when, you know, to all intents and purposes, you know, he has been found not guilty of the claims against him, rightly or wrongly. We've all got our opinions on that. But essentially, she was told she couldn't make that show, and they ended up making the documentary was essentially about the relationship between Salmond and Sturgeon. It's quite a good listen.
It was a fictional show about a guy called Steve Mammon, who may or may not have been involved in sexual misconduct when he was the leader of a party. No, is that not what they did?
But
no,
yeah,
I know.
There's obviously been a lot of reports about, or certainly a lot of opinion pieces, etc., speaking about this split in the nationalist movement in Scotland at the moment. Do you think that that's something which exists? Do you think that there is a problem there?
I know there's been a few members that are trying to sort of make this issue out, but before all this, the salmon stuff started to come out over the last year, 2 years, the party was quite concrete behind Nicola. It still is now. I mean, Nicola's got full support, as far as I'm aware, online and everything else, but there's been a few folk that have left the party because they feel like the party's not doing enough to shield Salmond, but he's no longer a party member. He's not an MP or an MSP, so there's not much the party can do in that sort of line of it. But I wouldn't say there's much of a divide. But obviously, you've seen on social media, there's been a few people who've left the party claiming there's people leaving the party for crazy reasons every day of the week, especially if you get a membership of around 20, around 30,000.
Yeah. It's always been a broad spectrum sort of alliance, so.
Well, that's what the party is. I mean, the party is very much, there's one very predominant key issue that ties in a lot of similar views, but they have various opinions on certain things. There's various opinions on trans rights, for example, at the present moment, even though almost every single one of them, if you sat them down and asked them, would tell you they had liberal views and they were left-leaning liberals, there's still a whole pile of them that don't think that trans people deserve the same rights as non-trans women.
I guess, there seems to be a lot of debate over the Gender Recognition Act. And I know that the SNP have kind of shelved that for now. Do you think that that's something which we'll see picked back up again in the future, maybe in the next term of Holyrood?
We need to wait and see if it's in the manifesto. I mean, one of the main issues is that you get people shouting from one side and people shouting from another, but none of the sides are listening to each other.
Yeah.
But I think if we get that sort of approach where we do listen to the concerns of the trans and anti-trans and find a sort of a middle ground and see where we all sort of lie and sit and what we're all getting on with. I mean, I know I signed the pledge for the GRA to be re-40 and everything else through this at the Aberdeen conference last year, along with quite a lot of other candidates for the NAC. But it's especially, one of the main things you find, especially during council, you find out you need to listen to every side of the story to come up with a decision. You can't only listen to yourself. If I voted for what I thought was best all the time, and you can imagine when you've got 30 councillors in the SNP alone, how that would go if all of us voted for what we thought was best. You need to come up with a decision and we all stick behind it.
Yeah. I mean, and that's something which, the party has been criticised sometimes for being too disciplined at times. There's not a lot of room for dissenting voices and stuff like that. I know that obviously recently there was a bit of a scandal around the exam results and how it was handled, the algorithm, issues with SQA. And, I noticed that yourself, you were prepared to say that, you didn't think it was right and something needed to be done about it. Is that something which you felt happy and free to do, or were you worried about repercussions from sort of stating that case?
It was kind of a hard one to tackle because the algorithm was bad against working class areas and more deprived areas, and myself growing up both in Saltcoats and then in the Wishaw area as well. I mean, I get dragged up the back end of a council scheme, so I'd have probably failed half my exams if that algorithm was used during I was at high school.
Yeah.
But I wasn't feared of a backlash. I know that whatever happened, I'd have to deal with it whatever way it happened, but just so happened that the day after I posted that on social media, the party sort of the
Changed their
government-
entire opinion because of you.
the government. I don't know. Nicola follows me on Twitter. Maybe she's seen that and thought, "Oh, I need to."
I better get this sorted. But no, but I can understand. And the thing is, like, from a party point of view, I would imagine that they would be expecting guys like yourself and other councillors from areas similar to our area are much more likely to take a stance that you took. I mean, like, if you were like the SNP councillor for like Bears Den, you're probably getting much fewer emails regarding, oh, our grades were really good. Do you know what I mean? Like, whereas when you've got, and that's the other thing that, again, people maybe don't really understand from a logistics point of view. Wish is quite small, but it has like 3 high schools.
Yeah.
Like, so it's got what was Clyde Valley, what is currently Coltness High and St Aidan's, but it's not called Clyde Valley anymore. Called
Clyde Valley's the high school. The primary schools it's been changed now.
Oh, is it? Is Clyde Valley still the name of the high school? Well, anyway, so they've got those 3, and then we've got another 3 in Marble. 4 in Motherwell or something. Do you know what I mean? There's a massive amount of schools in this area for a relatively small population, and we drag in certainly from the St Aidan's, from the Catholic school point of view, they drag people in from 20 mile away. Do you know what I mean? Like, what's the distance between here and Lanark? It must be about 15 mile or something.
I think it is, yeah.
So I mean, like, so because of that, there is lots of people from both North and South Lanarkshire in here at the schools, and there's also lots and lots of pupils that are in an impoverished area that absolutely, definitely would feel the poor end of the algorithm.
It's certainly something like well, not deliberately, it's by design, it punished high achievers from poor, deprived areas, basically, like the most.
Yeah.
And that, like, I was the same as you. I grew up in a council estate and Wishy as well. I definitely would have seen my grades slashed. And, I am someone who votes SNP on a regular basis. I am a supporter of independence, etc. But I think there has to be room for criticism within the movement. I think that when you do criticise the SNP for anything online, the sort of rabid response that you get sometimes, I find baffling, because it's almost as if there are people who will not accept any criticism. And I think that the independence movement, in order to move forward, needs to be able to respond to criticism. And like you say, that means listening to other people's viewpoints. It's no good to just scream, "You're a transphobe" at somebody as soon as they ask a question, because it is a difficult subject for a lot of people. I would say particularly the older generations as well. I think younger generations are a bit more accepting of it, maybe more used to it. I don't know, but it certainly seems that the older generations find it harder to deal with. But I think that I don't necessarily think that makes them an out-and-out bigot. I think it's just perhaps they need a bit more of an explanation and a bit more of a conversation to sort of understand it from the opposite point of view as well.
Yeah, I mean, especially from the council's approach across Scotland, the councillors are the face of the party locally.
Yeah.
I mean, the MPs and the MSPs obviously get the attention when it comes to social media and everything else, but it's normally the councillors that go to the meetings that they all get invited to, whether it be the high schools or the primary schools or the community councils, or even one of the major issues up in the Remains ward, part of my ward, was there's a rat issue, so I ended up having to make 2 public meetings about that cause. But obviously, you had the MPs and MSPs backing and the representatives there and everything else, but it is the councillors that are the face. So if we're not going out and saying, "No, we need to change this policy," then it's us that's going to be getting the brunt of it. Like, well, why do you support this? And if you don't support it yourself, you can't defend it to your full right without having to read off a script that somebody sent you through. Just say this and this.
Yeah, so there has to be a bit of room for you to take your own personal view on that.
Yeah. Especially within the council. Like I said, there's 30 SNP councillors from across North Lanarkshire. We've all got different walks of lives and that, but when it comes to decision making, it's all, we'll have our say, we'll have our bits and pieces, and then it goes to a vote. Whoever one's most supported, that's what we support going forward, because obviously you have to work as a group, you have to be able to work in that setting to be able to be able to work together.
Yeah.
You have to respect that you're not always going to get your way, and you need to an extent, make sure your voice is heard to try and change somebody else's.
Yeah.
You know that, just for on record, because we're talking about it, I don't necessarily believe the way that you were talking about the dealing with the transphobic issues that we're seeing at the present moment in Scotland is the right way. But I mean, that's just so it's on record that it's just nowhere my stance would be in it. Like, I believe that we're getting ourselves mixed up with essentially allowing people to have an opinion. Essentially, I know it sounds awful, but from the point of view is that there's some things that it's not an opinion based, that you can have an opinion on it, but that doesn't matter. Like, from a GRA point of view, we start on the baseline of everyone is equal, then we work back from that. So I see people have got issues with, as it comes up all the time, sharing toilets. Well, you start talking about the sharing toilets issue once everybody's on a level playing field and they've got the equal rights, rather than we'll talk about it first and then we'll see where we get to, because what we're then doing at that point is we're creating an environment in Scotland where we're saying these people currently don't have all the same equal rights until we let the people who have got mad toxic old world views about stuff to discuss it, and then we'll give them the equal rights, which is never fair, because everyone is entitled to the same equal rights, and then we work back from it.
But what you need to remember is that a lot of these people are scared because of complete disinformation they've been fed by, in some cases, very prominent bloggers and stuff like that. So you need to be able to educate them on the fears, reassure them, and explain the reality of the situation. If you do that and then they still have a toxic view, then that's a different story.
I don't disagree that education is a huge part of it, and that's what has to happen. You have to get them around it. But while we put a stop in place to say we need to make sure that everybody's in the same playing field, we have to discuss the problems. What we're actually saying, regardless of how we mean it, what we're saying is these people are currently not entitled to the same rights as everyone else until we've all made sure that the people who don't think they should have rights are on the same pages as, which is mental, because if for an independent Scotland, if that's what we're aiming for and that is the general key goal from everyone, the idea that any subcategory, if you will, of the voter base of Scotland can at some point be told you in fact don't have the rights that we've now gave to everyone else until we've discussed whether or not these bad racists have decided that they don't want you to have rights, and we have to see where they're coming from. That just doesn't make sense. And I also believe, and kind of off subject, but I also believe that this is a very specific issue to trans, because if we were having the same conversation about Asian people or about black people or about Muslim people or even about gay people, it wouldn't be accepted as something we have to, all come into it from a level playing field. It would be, these people deserve rights. And then we'll talk about what your problems are with these people having rights, but they deserve rights because they are people, they are people, and they all have to be in the same level playing field. And then we fix the problems that you have got.
The problems that people have got, like I say, is stuff that isn't actually part of the GRA.
I know, but that's what I mean. So then you just pass it. And then you start talking about, because regardless of what, because by saying that we're not passing it until everybody's on the equal playing field, we are creating an environment where we're saying we might not pass it.
Anyway, it's a cul-de-sac we're going to go down.
Oh, no, definitely. But
I take your point.
Yeah.
So when it comes to, hopefully 2022, Scotland, we get a second referendum, we vote yes. What is Cameron McManus's vision of an independent Scotland? What does that look like?
Start off with getting rid of the nuclear weapons. I think that has to be one of the first stages to try and go down, to find out how we can get rid of them and how quickly and when and where they're going. I mean, my objective is to get rid of them point blank across the world, not just in Scotland. If we can get them out of Scotland, that's one step closer. But it's everybody's vision of what an independent Scotland is going to be is completely different. I mean,
yeah, which is why I asked what yours was.
Sold out t-shirts and see you Jimmy hats, as far as I can see.
I think the sort of American presidential approach and the two houses would work in Scotland. I think it's too big of a system to work in America. America's too big for that sort of system. But for smaller countries, I think that'd probably suit Scotland, to have that sort of a two-house approach plus your president on itself. Obviously, we prime minister as long as we've got sort of the monarchy down Westminster and down in England.
That's another issue.
Would you like to see a written constitution for Scotland?
I think a written one's the way forwards. 'Cause I'm sure that the American written constitution's based off what the Scottish one was when they sent off the Declaration of Amber Oath. I'm pretty sure I'm saying that 100%.
No, I think as I understand, I've heard something
Yeah.
similar, and also we're in one of like 5 countries or something, as the UK at the present moment, that like doesn't have a written constitution or something very tiny. It is 5 or so, isn't it? Like
That's small.
3, 5, 7,
Yeah.
something in that region. Like it's less than 10 certainly.
It's
across the
mostly
whole
all
world.
the newer countries that don't have written constitutions, but yet
Or
we're the
dictatorships.
we're the only long-term sort of approach without a written constitution, because Westminster is sort of a playground for the Eton and all the other high-end high schools and schools in general.
Yeah.
That's it. There's never been an appetite from the government has existed so long. Essentially, the government didn't really come off the back of like uprising or turmoil. It's just existed forever. So there has never been an appetite to
There's
make
still-
sure the poor people are protected.
There's still
It's
some
like-
rules down there, like, especially speaking to some of the MPs that go back 200, 300 years that they still stick to this day that are completely crazy. There's
Running around
one-
with swords and stuff.
I
like
like give a goose to the first lady that enters the room on a Tuesday. Mad stuff. No sure if that's true.
that. But yeah, so you'd like to see a written constitution. You think there'd be a couple of houses. Obviously, we're getting rid of nuclear weapons. We're getting rid of the monarchy.
We're going to have a peerage system.
Yeah, we're going to get rid of the unelected house.
No, both houses going to be elected.
Yeah.
I don't think we can have an elected house. I mean, that's just basically.
You think there's an ethical problem there for decisions and stuff?
I
Yeah.
prefer the elected representatives to be elected
Yeah.
rather than picked because they're your pals or,
Or
done
they're
it.
loaded.
Aye.
Or the Ruth Davidson or
Aye. They
whatever.
gave us a good amount of money through through funding for the party.
So, what do you think about something like the voting system? Would we be going down the route of proportional representation?
It works. I mean, it's meant to work where you don't get majorities, so it is, and it's meant to go so that you are working together. I mean, I've always been against the sort of two-party state sort of approach. When you've got numerous big parties and everybody's getting listened to equally, then there's no this sort of approach where across the rest of the UK you've got the Labour and the Tories, and if you want a protest vote, you've got the Lib Dems or the Greens, and your only 2 real parties is the Labour or the Tories. It reminds me of that Simpsons episode of I Voted Kodos, when the 2 aliens come in and it's like, oh, well, I didn't vote for Lame, I voted for the other one. But it's a sort of the same problem in America, where at the last election you had Hillary Clinton or Donald Trump, and Hillary did have a great couple of policies here and there, but from our outside all looking in, it was, do you want a 10-inch nail through your left eye or a 10-inch nail through your right eye?
Aye, pretty
Well,
uninspiring candidates.
So
I would
it's-
say similar at the minute as
Yeah,
well.
Yeah, I mean, but with Biden and Trump, I mean,
Aye.
Biden and Trump fundamentally, from a business perspective, from an internal policy perspective, are probably not going to be dramatically different.
No.
And Trump's isolationist policies probably protects more of the world than Biden's. But traditionally, Biden's party have had interventionist policies that I would imagine, and without checking, I can't be sure, but I would imagine Biden.
So, are
probably
you saying
adheres to.
vote Trump?
I'm saying vote neither of them. I'm saying, but see, the problem is the way that people perceive America. People perceive America as a two-party system because, for all intents and purposes, it is.
Yeah.
But people don't perceive the UK as a two-party system, even though, for all intents and purposes, the UK is. Like, I know we've got another option in Scotland. I know there's another option in Wales. I know there's another option in Northern Ireland. But essentially, if you're in England, you're voting for one of 2 parties, and as you said, you could vote for Lib Dems or Green, but
It's a protest vote.
you was just no gone.
Yeah.
Like, you know what I mean? Like, and that's actually sounds awful because obviously we've had Green Party members on, and I've got a lot of love for a lot of their policies and stuff, but it's not, they're not going to win. Do you know what I mean?
No.
And the Lib Dems had the closest chance they've ever had in the last 10 years. And when they got in, they absolutely balls that up worse than any party possibly could have.
Yeah.
They just became Tory light for 4 years, 5 years.
They broke their major promise, and they've never really been forgiven for that. So, as two final questions. First of all, what does the future hold for you as a politician? What are your plans going forward?
It's mostly focusing on the council. I'm really enjoying the job as to what I've done the last 3 years. I'm likely to stand again in 2022 at the council elections, so hopefully it's getting a majority for the SNP in North Lanarkshire, both across Scotland as well. North Lanarkshire's where we need the real change for me, myself locally, and everybody else that stays here. I'd probably like to try and stand on the list for Central Scotland. But if you look at the recent polls, it's not going to mean anything anyway. I mean, the way it's looking, we're getting a clean sweep across the constituencies.
Yeah, and do you think that an SNP majority in North Lanarkshire would see a major change for people's lives around here?
I mean, some of the policy ideas we had beforehand were a wee bit out there, like getting a better connected transport system across North Lanarkshire. Because I mean, trying to get from
Trying to get a train in North Lanarkshire is a tough experience.
the best of times, never mind trying to get from Wishaw to maybe Cumbernauld or Coatbridge. You have to literally go in to Glasgow to get a train back out, and the buses are pretty similar, apart from your wee odd bus that's every hour and a half, 2 hours.
That's our friend Quinn, who is in like Cumbernauld essentially. When he came through not so long ago to visit, he had to get a train to Motherwell that took ages, and then from there had to wait 20 minutes so he could get a train from Motherwell to Wishaw to get him to come up to us. Now, I know for lots of people that doesn't mean anything, but Motherwell's really not that far from where we are. Like, as in, it's actually in walking distance. Like, it's a hike, but it's actually in walking distance.
So what
you
you're
know what I mean?
saying is Quinn's a lazy bastard?
Well, I mean, I'm definitely on record saying that anyway. But my point being, like, it shouldn't be so difficult if you are at the bottom of Motherwell to be able to get up to Wishaw without having to wait 20 minutes for a train after you've had a train for Cumbernauld.
Especially when you look at the older maps. I mean, one of the mains used to have a train station. I only found that out recently when I found out on one of the mains remembered Facebook pages that all the old grannies post in, remembering here saying, "Oh, here's a picture of me at my christening in 1972," and a bit of things like that. But that's when I found out the main. I know there's railway tracks up that way, and I know that Shotts, I think, had 2 train stations, and now they've only got 1.
I would imagine the train be better background history, but I'm guessing that it's the same train line that was in your mains that probably went up to the back, because there's train lines that run by the old law hospital.
They were the mining lines, basically, were they? Like they were for...
No, it was 2 separate lines. So when you look at the map that the person posted online, there was a train station and there was a mining one that was just up the hill a wee bit. So there was the two. The probably are connected one way or another. But
And then there's also the train lines that are down that only now feed the Royal Mail. There's a fair few train line down at the bottom part of Wishaw, and then there's also some at the other side as well. So I mean, there is lots of abandoned train lines.
So we would see an increase in public transport. Is there anything else which you would have planned?
Right now, I know we're sort of in the planning stages of the 2022 elections, so it's obviously try to get the manifesto sorted for them. There's nothing I can say right now.
Well, once the manifesto's out, you can come back on. You can talk to us about it.
Aye, man.
Can I also say though, it would have been a wild answer when you said, so if it was a majority SNP, would things be any better for North Lanarkshire? If you were just like, nah. See, to be honest, it'd be kind of similar. Yeah, aye.
And yeah, so the last question would be, what's the single best reason you can put forward for Scottish independence?
It's making sure that everybody's vote counts. I mean, when you look at Westminster, you take away all of Scotland's vote for the last 40, 50, 60 years, it makes no change as to who's in the government at all. So in theory, Scotland's voice is not listened to at Westminster at the best of times, never mind right now when we have got the SNP there. Even when it was Labour, it was,
regardless of it being Labour, like if the entire country voted Labour, so I've done it back for about 55 years or thereabouts that I've checked all the results myself to be sure. And in every case, if you go in the idea that the whole of Scotland voted for Labour and you remove that from the numbers, it doesn't change the outcome of the election.
No, but then that can be said for both Northern Ireland and for Wales. But I think that's just because of obviously the population sort of growth aspect from it. But that's a hard one. You don't want to make the smaller countries too powerful, but at the same time, you don't want it to be the sort of one-party state like we're sort of in right now.
But also, like, the demographic and the geographic differences in Scotland in comparison to the rest of the UK, but in particular England, mean that we have different needs.
Yeah.
And you can't service both of those countries' needs at the same time with the same policies.
You see that a lot when the Labour or Tory MPs come up. I mean, last time Jeremy Corbyn came up was the same time as when Jeremy Hunt came up. They were both posing with their Iron Brew bottles and their fish slippers, like, we're one of you. And it's like, no, you don't get it.
No, you're
the
no.
problems are. We're still suffering in the Ravenscraig from Thatcher shutting the mines in the 70s and 80s.
Yeah.
When we've still no came over that. I know the population, the unemployment's starting to go down now, but that's only after 20 years after Holyrood's been there to
and that was
focus
before
on the issues.
COVID as well.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, yeah, man. Thanks for covering
That's
on
great to be
Absolute pleasure, man. Absolute pleasure. See you in the Soli.